I'm Just Saying is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Hey everybody, welcome to I'm Just Saying episode 91. I'm Andrew Zarin. I'm joined by Lon Blaze. How you doing, Lon?
I'm doing well. Joanna's out doing the migraine thing again.
How's she doing?
Crappy. This has not been a good year, and like the quick hot weather just is wreaking havoc with her head. So all you people who are looking for the cute redhead, she ain't here tonight.
But you're here.
But I am here.
The cute bald head.
Yep. I understand that it looks good.
What, the shaved head?
The shaved head.
Now, do you use the head blade?
No, I just use a regular, the quadruple razor there. Just a regular razor.
Is it difficult? The process of it?
You know what's really tough? The little divots in my temples.
To get in.
Yeah, it's like I have to do it like 6 times.
It has to be awful to cut your head.
I've cut my head once in the whole time.
Yeah.
Just once. And that was because I just don't go fast.
Yeah.
I don't go fast. If I only have a couple of minutes, I don't shave my head that day. But I shave my head, I would say, out of the 7 days a week, maybe 5.
5 days out of the 7.
Yeah,
okay.
so like
So it
2
doesn't
on,
grow that
2 on,
fast.
1 off, 2 on, 1 off, kind of.
Yeah.
And I generally, and depending on when like some days I'll let it go until I'm like just before the show, which is not today. I haven't shaved it today. Take it easy. This was a long week. Started off kind of cool, but it got kind of difficult.
So what happened?
Well, it was my birthday last Thursday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm now 54, and it's just weird.
Do you ever, I was about to ask, does it get weird? You're like, wow, I'm 54.
It gets,
do you have a number in your head?
No, I just feel like I'm in my 40s. I always, I've felt like I'm in my 40s for a really long time. And what's weird is people say I don't look it, and that's cool and everything, but I'm 54. No matter how young people say you are, and you get the other thing is you look good, and you know that the parenthetical statement for your age is in there, I just would rather just look good. But I'll take it, I'll take looking good. But the Thursday happened, and Joe had a migraine, so that kind of sucked. So we didn't get to do what we wanted to do, and we kind of hung out. We eventually went out to dinner and stuff, but it was more quiet than anything, and that's fine. I don't expect like a really big...
Yeah, you're not one of those people that's like, wow, okay, I don't have a party or something.
Yeah, no. If someone threw me a party, I'd be really happy and stuff, but I don't like really expect it. I would think that the best party ever thrown for me would be my funeral. I would hope that people would come and just really rock out and tell some really cool stories. That's what I would really do.
Well, I think that, do you think that's a new thing, though? Do you think it's like we've evolved as people? Like, we don't want a funeral to be a depressing thing. I was watching a TV show, and...
Yeah, well...
And that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, my mother-in-law did it, and it freaked all her friends out because she said she didn't want anyone... She was an Italian woman, okay? And she told everyone that she didn't want people wearing black. Tell Italian people not to wear black to a funeral. They flipped out.
Tell them not to wear black on a regular basis.
And they all wore black, and all my friends... did what Joanna said, and we all wore, people wore white suits. I wore a flowered tie,
oh, wow.
And...
Did they find it bizarre? Did they get it? Some did.
You know what it was like? We understand, but this is what we do. It was almost okay that we did it.
Yeah.
But they couldn't.
Sure.
It's like when you... I love people who try and get their parents to be vegan or to eat low fat something. It's like, I've been eating this crap for 70 years.
Yeah.
I am not going to turn around tomorrow and go, you know what? All that stuff that I really love to eat, I'm not going to eat it anymore. I mean, at the end of my life, I would think that at 75, I'm going to start smoking cigarettes and drinking scotch. At a certain point, how much longer am I going to live? I'm going to do all the things, I'm going to be doing black tar heroin and, I would think that I deserve that after a while. If I can't look good, I want to feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I
mean, if you're going to start something, you better start at that age.
Exactly.
Because you won't feel the effects. You'll
Right.
die in anyway in 10 to 15 years, and, you would have enjoyed it.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't guarantee that that's what I'm going to do, but I feel like that's the way I go. I mean, I'm not sitting here going, oh boy, in 12 years I get to have heroin. You know, I'm not doing that at all. But it's just like too much has happened. Well, this is where the
So
weekend
the
got
day
weird.
of your birthday.
The day of my birthday, you know, that was quiet, and I woke up the next morning and I went off to do boot camp stuff because now I wake up at like 5 a.m. all the time. I go over and clean the boot camp because, you know, Joe's asleep and I can do it and it doesn't bother her, and I have my time with her. I'm become a big napper in the afternoon. I'll take an afternoon nap now because I'm up so
like
early.
2-3 o'clock.
Yeah, 2-3 o'clock. I'll take about an hour's nap and I'm good for the night, and it's all good. So I come home from boot camp and Joe's on the phone and it's really serious. And she has an aunt that's 90 years old, and I'm thinking, oh my God,
man,
this is really, you know, we're in a bad place. And then she said, "Let me get him." And she put me on the phone with my youngest brother, who has been my mother's caretaker for the last 8 years.
And you don't really speak to your family, right?
Yeah, it's, you know what it is? I tried. There's no like really bad blood. It's just that I'm just so disassociated from them and stuff. And well, very honestly,
And they're all tight, right? Or some
No,
of them are?
no.
No, okay.
well, my family is a series of ever evolving alliances. It's like a bad episode of Survivor.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like this week they're talking to this person, but if I'm talking to you, Andrew, then there's someone that's not talking to you.
Okay.
And if I'm not talking to that one and you're my ally, you're not talking to that one either. And it just keeps switching back and forth.
Has it always been like that?
Yeah.
Like since the time since you were kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like we've never I have 8 brothers and sisters, okay? And we've never all been in the same room.
What do you think is attributed to that? Was it just upbringing, or was it the age difference?
I was like raised by wolves. I really was. It was just like we had no social graces. When I met Joanna, she said you were polite, you were nice, but you didn't know how to ingratiate. Like when we had company, I would never offer anyone something to drink
That's interesting.
because I didn't.
You didn't know.
I wasn't impolite. And if someone said, "Can I get something to drink?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah, sure."
What's the age difference between you? You're not the youngest, right?
I'm the 6th.
You're the 6th. Okay,
I'm
so
the 6th of 9.
So you
And-
and the oldest, and you and the youngest.
Okay, me and the oldest, my oldest brother. No, excuse me, my oldest sister. My sister's the oldest child. She is 13 years older than me.
Okay, so she's almost 70.
She's 16. Don't push it, man. She's 67.
So if I'm doing the math, yeah. Okay, so
She's
67 years old. Okay.
And then my youngest brother and sister are twins, and they're 7 years younger than me. They're 47.
Okay.
So there's 20 years
There's
from
a
oldest,
20-year gap.
from oldest to youngest. But the weirdest thing is there's 5 kids like nearly a year apart. Boom, 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 boom. First 5.
Yeah.
Then 6 years blank.
For you.
Then me. Then 5 years blank. Then 3.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm like this weird middle child.
They almost gave up, and then they're like, let's...
Well, here's the weird thing. I'm not telling stories I've told. I think I've told you I'm writing a play about this because it's just so.
Which, by the way, I've been for people who don't know, you've gone into it, but you really haven't. But if this thing happens, it's just mind blowing. Like the stories that
no
you've
one will
told
believe
me.
it. No,
Like
everyone
the story,
will think I make.
Yeah, like it's because. Listen, like I know you, and you're quirky, and like you're into like strange things, you're into like theater, and you got the boot camp. Like there's always something happening. But like if I look at you, I'm like, oh, he's just a normal guy.
Yeah.
You're walking a dog, but like, and you're nice, you're a kind person. But like when you find out the backstory behind it,
I come from a Jerry Springer family. I just come from this mega Jerry Springer family.
Yeah.
I'm the only one of my brothers and sisters that sort of graduated from high school in 12 years.
Yeah.
A lot of them did the GED thing. And I went off to college.
But your father was a teacher.
I didn't know my dad. My parents split, and my dad didn't become a teacher. My dad worked 20 years as a truck driver and then became a teacher. And I worked driving a truck and then I became a teacher. I ended up echoing his life like so completely. Well,
so
my brother,
youngest one.
My youngest brother calls me. He lives at the house that I grew up in, and the only other person that lives there with my mother is my brother. And my mom is huge. She weighs a ton, and she kind of like, she never didn't love my dad. Loved him so much that even after the divorce, hated him. Because if you love someone that much, you're gonna hate them. I wasn't even allowed to refer to my father as my father growing up. He was Mr. Blaze. That's all.
It's very interesting.
Oh yeah. And
I mean, just like the deep psychological
Oh, I know.
aspect of it. I mean, just
and then I was the oldest kid at home after the divorce, and I became this sort of fill-in son/husband, brother/father. I was the
you
disciplinarian.
picked like a.
I raised
yeah.
I raised the three youngest kids. I was the mother while my mother worked. You know, I ran the household. That's
And
what
then
I
were
do
the
when-
older ones? The older ones. I mean, this
gone.
is you're
They were
talking.
they were gone. I was 9 when
I
my
mean,
parents finally divorced.
They're like
So my
really the
next older
hippie
brother-
generation. They're like gone doing their thing.
You
like,
know, they miss being hippies. My brothers and they miss being hippies by choice. They just, none of them had really long hair. I had one brother that sort of experimented.
is it like the Massachusetts thing? It's like a different type of.
Yeah, they were like country.
Liberal.
They were country kids, so yeah, it's just kind of odd. And then I ended up being different by being such a dreamer, and I always used my imagination. I buried my head in a book and I got smart,
Yeah.
whereas all my brothers were violent and they worked on their cars and they were very real blue collar. And for many years they could buy and sell me many times over. So it wasn't matter that like they were richer than me. I mean, they were poorer than me or anything, because I was a teacher in the
Just
beginning.
different type of people.
Just a different type of person. People meet me and they're like, "You're from the same family."
Yeah.
It's just it's an.
So
odd
what
phenomenon.
did you see that they didn't?
I don't
Because
know.
you had to have seen something that you were able to.
Well, first of all, I said I think there are 3 things that changed me from being like the rest of them. One, my family moved into our house. They rented a house, but they moved into a house that they were purchasing when I was 4 years old, and it was the worst house in the best part of town.
okay.
They got a great deal. My mother and father bought their first house for $11,200.
Listen, you could buy 100 of those in Detroit right now.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Of course, the one bad thing is that they're in Detroit.
Yeah. So okay, so you attribute one that's
is
one
like
factor. Okay.
because I got into a good school system. I was in a really, really good school system. And then 2, my mom worked as a house cleaner, and she cleaned houses for this person that she just wanted me to emulate her 2 sons. And when my mom got divorced, I did everything that I possibly could to make my mother happy because she was so sad. She cried all the time because she was divorced.
Yeah.
And I mean, she used to tell me stories about, how my father was evil and how he like didn't want me and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
like, which was really unfair of her, but she just, she put me on her side and it, from all appearances, she needed me to help her. And you know me, I help people.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I do. So
It's okay. That's
She-
number 2.
she kind of took advantage of it. So the people that she worked for, their sons went to this fancy prep school, and she knew I was smart. So she had me. I would never have known to. I took the entrance exam for this very fancy prep school, and I got in. So I
Okay.
went to this fancy prep school. So now I'm seeing kids who live on a whole other level.
Very wealthy. I mean,
Very
you're
wealthy
talking-
and that sort of thing. And I wasn't like, I didn't get picked on because I was the poor kid. What I did was I just sat and watched, and I absorbed it all like a sponge. And here's the third thing. And the third thing, I have to find this guy and thank him because he got me out of this world. The guidance counselor in my school got me a scholarship that covered half my, got me one scholarship that covered half my college expenses in total. I don't mean just tuition and board, food plan, books, travel back and forth. I mean,
Yeah.
it was incredible. And then he went on and continued. When I got to college in 1976, I had more scholarship money than I had bills. I
Wow.
had to actually give back a couple scholarships because I was, he got me there. But that got me out of that house. Now, my mother had always said, "You're going to take care of me, right? You're going to move back in the house and take care of me."
After college.
After college.
Yeah.
Well, or if you go and you become famous, you become a famous actor, then, I'll come and live where you are. But, what parent says that to a 7-year-old kid?
Yeah.
You
How
know?
old were you?
I was 7 when
Oh, you
my
were a
dad
kid.
left.
Yeah.
Right. And I was very impressionable. And I remember my mother
you always-
crying. And I just remember saying, I'm never going to make my mother cry. And I was the kind of kid that, like, at 15, what kid goes, "Mom, can I go to a party?" And she says no. And I go, "Okay." I always did that.
Very interesting. Because you wanted her to be happy.
Right. I was never going to make her unhappy. So I go off to college, and I, between the prep school and the college, I discover that there's, a whole world out there. And I stay in New York. And then I have the audacity to get married. And then you have the further audacity to say, I'm not moving back to the house with my wife. I'm going to live in New York.
Was that a surprise?
To her?
To her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because she thought you go to Hofstra, you come back,
Yeah.
get a job there, maybe teach over there, whatever you were going to do.
Yeah, or do theater, like, there's regional theater, do theater, like, she kept seeing it as like a hobby.
Yeah.
So she has always despised my wife, not because it's Joanna, because it's my wife. It wouldn't have mattered who I married. But when I got married, it was just all she wanted to do was talk about what an evil bitch my wife was. And at one point I said to her, can't do it. Either you accept this or I'm walking away.
Yeah.
And I walked away. And I didn't speak to her until like the bike ride. The first bike ride.
Because I remember you had said you hadn't spoken to your family in a while, and then you spoke to her.
Now here's the thing. By the time I did the bike ride, my father had passed away.
You're talking like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah, 2008. So it's 4 years ago. My mother is walking around telling people that her husband died, a man that she was divorced from for 30 years. She's playing the widow card.
When did your father pass?
2006.
Okay, so 2 years. Okay.
But she's like, so people who have never met my dad meet my mom, and she's like, oh, yeah, I lost my husband in 2006.
So interesting.
Oh, yeah. It's like, it's what she always wanted, and then, that way she can live that story. Well, since that time, she's started to get frail and stuff, and my brother came in and started taking care of her. Now he basically became what I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which makes me feel like oddly guilty.
What does he do for a living?
My brother can fix and build anything. So
Okay.
he's like the town handyman.
So it's almost like he got stuck.
Yeah.
Like you always hear the story about the local
the one
person.
kid,
Yeah.
the one kid.
And somebody gets stuck, and he's one of them.
He's like me. He takes care of people. He got caught in it, and I didn't. Well, he called me on Friday and said, Mom's fallen a bunch of times. I can't do it anymore. And he is like basically being a nurse to her. He is doing stuff that no son should do for his mother. Shall we go there?
Yeah.
He's like doing it regularly. And my mom outweighs him by like 70 or 80 pounds.
Jeez.
And just in the same way that my mom said, you're going to come live with me and take care of me the rest of my life, right? Right? Like from the time it was 7 and I didn't do it. She said to him in the last 8 years, you're not going to put me in a home, right? You're not going to put me in a home. Whatever you do, you're not going to put me in a home.
Yeah.
And he's at a point now that he can't not put her in a home.
He can't do it.
He can't do it anymore. And he was sobbing on the phone because he's now breaking his promise.
And you have not really spoken to him.
No, because the reason I don't talk to him is not because I don't like him. I like my brother a lot. He's a really nice guy. He's got a heart as big as a cow. I really really like him, but he was being given messages of hate from my mother
From a young age.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he also, it was hard for me to explain to him why I couldn't do this. And by the way, he's had like 2 or 3 like long-term girlfriends, and every time my brother would go out on a date with them, he'd get a call. She'd go, I can't seem to find my medication. I can't,
Yeah.
So she interrupted like 3 of his relationships, and the only way that he's going to have a life is when she's no longer there. Because
and that's a crazy thing to think, but in a way, that's the only way he's going to be able to live his life.
Right, exactly. And I don't wish my mother ill. I used to, but I don't wish my mother ill will at all. I don't. She's lived a hard life. She got me, she got me here.
Yeah.
She kind of regrets that she got me here, but she got me here.
But why were you the chosen one? Why not, the 6 older ones or like the 3 younger ones?
They were gone. I was the oldest one at home. I grew up in this sort of subset of 9.
Oh, because your father...
Where they divorced,
yeah.
and a couple of them went to live with my father, and the rest of them were out on their own. In my house, you kind of leave the house at 18.
Yeah.
Just out, gone.
And you're gone, yeah.
Yeah. you know, and
you
some
might
of-
come back when you're 23 to say hello, but you're gone for the next couple of years.
No, you're gone. You don't ever live at home anymore.
No, I'm saying like to visit and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when you leave, you really leave.
Yeah, you move out.
Yeah.
You know, there was no hanging out with everything, and it just didn't work. So my mother's fallen a couple of times, and now in falling, she becomes bedridden. As she becomes bedridden, she gets because of her size, she gets bed sores and
Yeah.
everything really. And you know, my brother's not a professional, and you know, there's a lot of like chafing in parts of her body, and like
It's bad.
yeah, it's bad. So he had to put her in a nursing home, and he was just beside himself.
And what
So
was
I
her
was going to
reaction?
I was going to go home to Massachusetts this weekend for a couple events up there, and I wasn't going to go home. I was just, you know, people that I knew from my hometown,
Yeah.
and I tore up there Friday night instead. And when I got there, my brother was in his room in the basement. He's in an empty house, and he's in his room in the basement. He didn't like wait for me like in the den.
Yeah.
He was like in his room. It's a very insular, and like he's
again,
lost. He's lost.
Again, like the psychological aspect of that he doesn't feel like it's his.
Yeah, and by the way, he owns the house.
He owns it.
He owns it. He's owned it for 7 years. Because
Yeah.
my mom. See, the other thing that my mother did was every time, like, someone did something to displease my mother, and it could be something like not showing up for, you know, something.
Yeah.
She would change the will. My mother must have changed her will like 30 times.
Okay.
Okay. And at one point, she said something about my wife, and she said, "Then you're not in the will." And I said, "I don't want you to leave me anything. If the price is this,
Yeah, I don't want it.
I don't want anything." And I actually had a lawyer draw up a contract saying that I will, upon her death, seek nothing from my. I said, "I will seek nothing but what you give me."
And now,
I don't-
was it said when times were tough for you, like thinking like, well, she could play that card, or
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and she did.
So your brother owns a place; it's his
Yeah,
place,
and good for him.
And he's sitting in the basement
and he earned it.
and he's sitting in the basement.
Yeah, he's got a whole house, and he's sitting in
Yeah.
the basement.
Is it bizarre for you to go back to that house?
Yeah, it is, really is.
I mean, it has to be.
Because I always felt like the court jester in my family. I amused everyone. That's how I didn't get the crap kicked out of me by tougher brothers. And you know, I was like the smart one.
Yeah.
You know, you ask them, he's smart and he's funny.
Yeah.
You know, and that amused them. It was kind of wild. So I went to see her, and I got to tell you, it wasn't bad. You know, and she was happy that I came. And if that makes my brother's life easier, then I did the right thing.
Then you did the right thing.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where it stands. It's just, and
Now, do you think there's some sort of like closure or?
Well, in essence, my mom's short-term memory is bad, so she knows that I was there, and it's like I've always been there now.
Yeah.
You know, and it makes life easier for my brother.
Okay.
So I have a feeling I'm going to be going up there a few more times, more often than I have been.
Now, does she feel almost like your brother turned on her? Or like, what's her situation like now that she's in a home? Or like maybe she's getting it.
I think she a little bit she's getting it. A little bit she understands that the staff there is doing things but I think she doesn't realize that she's there for the long term yet. You know, she's doing when I go home. You know, but like you can sense that she feels like she's going to be there a little while until she gets better. She's just not going to get better.
Yeah.
She's kind of in there for the.
How old is she now?
She's 84. She'll be 85.
So
in
now,
December.
how about your other siblings? Now, what are they doing?
Circling like vultures.
Yeah. Really?
That's
that
really
bad?
hard for me to say, but they're kind of circling like vultures. I have a brother that he hasn't seen her in like years, and he heard she was in the hospital, and he was knocking on the door of the house. And I think they all think that there's like vast treasures
in that house.
In that house.
But your brother is a caretaker, so I mean, I don't know the will situation, but your brother. I mean,
the brother owns the
house.
house.
It's
his house
his house.
is his.
So
And
what do they do? They know that?
I think they don't believe it.
Okay, that's really. I mean,
and that somehow they'll be able. You know, some brother that hasn't seen my mother in 10 years can somehow contest. And I told my brother, I said, listen, if you need someone to testify to what you've done over the last 10 years, I'm there. You know.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
That's so. I mean, it's such a fascinating and in a bad way, but just so. I
Yeah.
mean, just the multiple layers to
Oh,
the
yeah.
story.
Oh yeah, and I haven't even started to scratch the surface of how bizarre all of this is. You know, I have a sister that called me last summer, and I had not heard from her in 25 years. And the last time I did hear from her, the very last thing she said to me is, "I'll see you at the wedding next week." My wedding.
Your wedding.
She never showed up, and I never heard from her again.
That was it.
That was
Not
it.
one call.
Not one call.
Oh my god, it's so.
Not a word through anyone. And when she called me, she said, "I understand you're married now." This is the girl that was going to be coming to my wedding.
Yeah.
It's like,
When did you speak to her?
what do you mean? When did I? Speak?
Like, when did she say, I understand you're married?
Oh, she called me last summer. 'Cause Joanne came out of the house and she said, honey, your sister Lauren is on the phone."
And everybody's an L, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
It's Linda, Larry, Lance, Lauren, Leland, Luke, Lanny, and Lisa. Yeah, we're all L's.
Why the L?
When my mom had her first kid, she had picked a boy's name and a girl's name. She had a girl. The girl's name she picked was Linda. My grandmother pulled out the knitting needles and made this really cool sweater with an LB on it. And it wasn't pink or blue. It was, a different color. And when she got pregnant again, it was the tradition in very poor families to, repeat some clothes. And she pulled out all the old baby clothes, and there's that sweater, and it's still really nice. So they just did it again. And by the time it got to the third or fourth kid,
It was like a thing.
it was going to be a tradition. By the time it got to me, the people were just tearing up, pages of the dictionary.
Trying to find else.
Yeah. Name him linoleum or lamppost or something. Yeah. Yeah. It's this is all the stuff that I talk about in the thing, because it's like, on one level, you meet my family that they're all. I'll give you two really positive things about all my siblings. They could charm your pants off. They're
Really?
charming. They're really charming in the short term. You know what I mean? All the girls.
The
in the
flaws
coffee,
don't come out.
the
Really.
all the girls in the coffee shop think all my brothers are cute and sweet and funny and kind of sexy and stuff. All my sisters are funny and all this, and all of them work like horses, like oxen, like they work so hard. They'll work like a 60, 70-hour week in a job, but they're all isolationists. Like, the only people none of my brothers and sisters have friends. They have a spouse. And when things go wrong with the spouse, they fall apart. And they'll fall apart for a couple of years, and then they'll meet a new person and then glom to them.
Do you think that has to do with the relationship between your mother and
Yeah,
father?
absolutely. I think my mother modeled it. Was like you find one person and you obsess on them.
So interesting. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it just.
Yeah. Well, there's 9 brothers. We're all from the same 9 brothers and sisters.
I mean, you were able.
We're all
to
from the
leave
same parent, and we've never all been in the same place at the same time.
ever.
Ever. We've had 8. Never had 9. I have a picture of 8 on my Facebook page.
Never 9.
Yeah, never 9. And every issue that's ever been on Jerry Springfield, Jerry Springer. Wow, where did that come from? On Jerry Springer has been an issue in my family. I mean, every issue.
So bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, but has there been anybody that almost made it out? Like anybody?
Yeah, everyone had like 2 or 3 years where they they got married, they had a kid, and it was all going really well, and then it just tanked. It was like they wouldn't let it be. They wouldn't let it happen. They wouldn't let it. It's like my family has like this fear of success.
Yeah.
They've all started businesses that worked really well, and then somehow they just committed suicide.
Yeah.
It's
It's self-inflicted, everything.
yeah.
But it's almost like this self-hatred and where I'm not going to fail, therefore I will not allow myself to fail. I'm going to fail on my own. I'm not going to let somebody else drive my business.
Yeah. I think, and everyone in my family is motivated by, like, my oldest sister is just neurotic. My oldest brother is violent. The next brother is like this complete sexual deviant. The next sister down is a compulsive liar. I mean, just like pathological liar. She would lie about what she had for breakfast.
But do you think that's a survival mechanism?
I think.
At like a young age, you develop this.
And well, someone said to me when I said this, is that what was your escape valve? And I said I was a dreamer.
Yeah.
I made up
stories.
Fantasized
about.
Yeah, and if you had asked me in high school about my family, I would have described the Waltons and believed it. I came from this really great, quirky, but great family.
That's interesting. But see that
because in my family, if you ask all 9 brothers and sisters what happened, you'll get 14 different answers, and there's only 9 people.
Yeah. See, my 2 brothers, they're the polar opposite sides of my personality.
But that I see happen all the time.
But it's interesting. Like I'm both, and one took one aspect of it, and the other one has the other aspect of it.
Right.
And it's like this,
right.
All total different sides.
Yeah, I'm in my family, and one of the reasons everyone got so mad was I was the even-headed one. I was the calm one. So I would go home. Even when I lived in New York, I would come home, and I would come through the door, and one of them would say, you have to talk to this one about this, and you have to talk about this one. And you have to tell them not to do this, and you have to tell them that I'm angry. And I was this intermediary in all these fights. And then I stopped, and that angered them. I went off and had my own life. And it really, really angered
because
them.
You left.
Well, I was gone, but then I refused to just play the diplomat role anymore. I refused to be the intermediary in all the fights. It was
were you looked at as like you turned your back on it? You left.
Did that exist? Much turn my back. Yeah, turn my back. But what it was, and he thinks he's better than us.
But that's a very blue collar, growing up in a blue collar. Like we have that here. I mean, this is, we live in Bayside, but it still
has a blue collar.
It's still a blue collar core.
Yeah, right. I always say about Bell Boulevard. Bell Boulevard really wants to be the Miracle Mile.
Yeah, but it never will.
It never will be.
No, too many. I'm not saying in a bad way. Too many. Firefighters, cops.
Right. The mindset is not
mechanics.
the same, so it can't be the same.
No, it's totally different. It's a totally different way of upbringing. But even here. Which, this is an upper middle class blue collar neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's not doctors and lawyers. You may have one or two.
But it's all people who expected their sons and daughters to become doctors and lawyers.
Like you have people that, they're truck drivers, but they own the trucking company and they make
exactly
a quarter of a milk clean in their pocket.
Right.
Or you have
the AC, the heating and AC
guy. Heating and AC guy, but he's making $300,000 a year on his business. You have the plumber, but he owns the plumbing company. So you have a lot of that, but
pest control, it's security, all those,
But what happened was a lot of
the guy down at the corner, of your street at 35th, down the corner where it turns, the Corbett house,
yeah.
I know him.
Do you?
Yeah, and that house is just like insanely beautiful.
Well, he built a barrier around it, but it still exists here. But what happened was the expectation was that, well, I have all this money, I worked hard, I'm putting 90 hours a week into my job. My kid is going to become a doctor. My kid is going to become a lawyer. But it's almost this endless cycle where they don't become that. And they end up, taking over the father's business. And one becomes a cop, one becomes a firefighter. And you stay in that mindset where, I'm a blue-collar guy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stay blue-collar because that's my neighborhood. And you know what? This one went to go become a lawyer. Oh, F them.
Yeah, and what I love is they say to their kids, hey, I want you to do better than me, okay? And yet, it's when their kids end up being better, they're like, he's all full of himself and stuff, and that's kind of the attitude that I got from my family.
But I mean, that exists in any kind of neighborhood like this, that's always going to be there. And you're talking about a different time. Not everybody, when you were growing up, the goal wasn't to become a doctor and a lawyer. It was have a decent job, buy a decent house, and have a family.
Yeah, or get a job that has like benefits.
Yeah. But I mean, people didn't think of, well, I want a job that I'm going to make 6 figures. Right. That was not a thought process ever. It was, well, I could buy a house.
You know what that show I talked to you about? I love that we're jumping around. That show that I talked about, United Stats of America.
Yeah.
They did one on money, and they did this study, and they said, does money bring you happiness? It does up to a certain point. You know what now realize this is the national average. Do you know what makes people happy? Like as happy as they're going to get? $75,000.
Yeah.
$75,000.
That's just enough.
$80,000. They're not a lot happier. And like if now when you go above that, it like brings on all kinds of responsibilities and everything. that having money has,
Yeah.
and they're not as and they don't get any happier.
Well, with 75, you could be middle class rich.
Yeah, in the rest of the country, particularly, especially if you buy a house in Detroit.
Yeah.
This is going to be our new barometer of.
But it is fascinating, I was somebody's messaged me and he goes, well, what did you want to be when you grow up? And you know what I wanted to be in the worst way? I thought the greatest job,
Batman.
other than Batman, a mechanic.
Oh,
My
yeah.
dad was a mechanic. And I saw my dad made a good living. And I would always say, I want to be a mechanic.
See, that's funny because I always see, like when I taught, I always found people who's, because they're, a big thing in like where you went to school, a bunch of people's families owned restaurants.
Yeah.
And the kids would go, I'm not working that hard. I'm never going to work as hard.
I'm never
as
going to do that.
Yeah.
And guess what happened when they turned 16?
They all worked at their
They all
dad's
worked at
place.
the restaurant.
And you know what? A lot of them are like okay with it. They just don't see themselves, because they're not out partying and stuff. I love that, like the real party dudes, and you were one of them, but you got you burnt it out early.
Well, I burnt it out. My biggest problem was I made good money really early.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't build up to value money. It was like, here's a lot of money. Let me go and blow it on something. I had that. But growing up, it was like, okay, my mother was like, oh, become a lawyer. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'll become a lawyer. Or I could go become a mechanic and make as much as I would becoming a lawyer.
Right.
It's like that's the justification that we make in our minds around
I wish
here.
people honored it more because, like I said.
You know what the greatest job is? In this neighborhood, if you ask anybody, what is the greatest job to have? You know what they're going to tell you?
What?
Firefighter.
Yeah,
Why?
firefighter.
You work 3 days a week. You open up a bar. You make $100,000 from the fire department. You retire in 20 years. There you go. You got a pension. You got everything.
Yeah.
That's the greatest job you could have. I don't think that mentality exists in Great Neck or in Manhasset. I don't think anybody's walking around saying, you know what, I could be a firefighter and make a great living. That's the difference. And when you grow up in a neighborhood like that and you go and become a doctor, a lot of people are like, he thought he was too good and he took off. I am assuming, it was like that in your area.
Yeah.
Like, what are your friends growing up doing now? Have they moved on?
Realize the high school that I
you
went to,
a good school,
I went to a good school, so all these people are doing like really fancy stuff. Although I have to tell you, I'm not friends with a lot of the people from my high school, not because I didn't like them, not because they didn't like me, but we just came from two different worlds.
But you had a reunion that you went to.
The high school reunion? Yeah. No, the reunion I went to this weekend was a town reunion.
Not the one this weekend, but
yeah. Oh yeah, I went up to a high school reunion, and it's Well, I always think that the 10th reunion is just really ugly because everyone's trying to compare themselves.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what I'm going for now.
They're working up to, what have you done?
Yeah.
Are you married? Do you have kids? And me, I'm outside the box. It's I don't have kids, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I have all you guys. That's that. That's like you're all my kids. I can walk down Bell Boulevard and see any 10 of my kids all the time.
So, but what are they doing? What are they doing for a career?
What, the people that
the people, like even in the town? I mean, did they leave or did they stay?
Danvers people stay. A lot of them stay, or they move and they buy a bigger house up in Maine. There's a lot of moving. Whereas here you move out of the boroughs into Long Island or Jersey. There you move to New Hampshire or Maine. Because that was cheaper properties up there, and you could start a house. And now, like people go to Maine more because New Hampshire got filled up. You know what I mean? It's a good place to go. I have childhood friends that are in Maine and New Hampshire.
I'm apparently having a 10-year reunion at the end of the month.
You are,
and I know nothing about it, but I ran into a couple people that I went to school with on Friday,
mm-hmm.
and we took the train together. We're all drinking on the train like a bunch of degenerates. One of the guys' pills are falling out of his pocket, and we're like joking. And Jess was with me, and we were talking about it. And I turned, I'm like, what? And I asked one of the girls, I'm like, what are you doing now? They go, oh, I went back to school. And another person goes, oh, I went back to school. And another person goes, oh, I went back to school. And it's become this false blanket of security where I don't have to go and start working. I can just keep going back to school. And I wonder what it'll be like in another 10 years. When we're approaching. We'll be in our 40s. We'll be approaching 40 at that point.
I think everyone's still doing what everyone always did. It's just taking them longer to do it. I think people are, they said kids don't grow up anymore. They do. They just grow up in their 30s now.
Yeah.
Whereas you used to kind of grow up in your 20s.
Like, people look at me like I got 10 heads. So, like, how long have you guys been married? And I'm like, oh, about 4 years. How long have you been together? I'm like, 7. Because you guys have been together since you were like,
oh, yeah. People think
19.
People think my marriage is like, it's a long marriage, is like a freaking anomaly. It's like, no one's married 25 years, you know?
But what changed that?
What changed? Oh, and by the way, in my family, other than my maternal grandparents, I have the longest marriage of my parents, of any of my brothers
and your brothers and sisters.
Yeah. No, excuse me. My dad's second marriage, I need a couple more years. I think he got to 27 years with his second marriage. He was married to my mother for 20 years, and then he remarried, and he was married for 27
Now,
years.
do you know her?
Yeah, she passed away. I met her. You know what's really weird? She's a lot like Joanna.
Very interesting.
Oh, my dad and I ended up being so alike. It was weird.
Do you think that's genetics, or is just like this?
Oh yeah, because I
you guys dealt with the same
I folded my arms the same way. I leaned my head back the same way, and I didn't grow up with them. You know, I didn't. Coffee and crossword puzzles. You know me.
Yeah.
Him too. You know, but I didn't witness him doing that. And you know, they say smells and stuff are the same. When I saw him when I was 27, just before I got married. And he leaned in and gave me a kiss on the cheek. And I remembered the beard growth. And it was like, and the Old Spice. And that I remembered from back then, you know.
Yeah.
The little bit of time that I had with him. It was like, boom, I was right there again. It was kind of weird.
So weird.
Yeah. And he was a really cool guy. And what's really weird, he was an auto shop teacher. He taught the way I did. Like he screwed with the kids' heads.
So what did he do when he retired?
He moved to Mississippi to be near his brother. His brother was a retired Navy guy, and they lived right on the Gulf Coast because there's a Navy base there. And my dad was a merchant marine, and I don't know for sure, but they kind of like have the same pension, and they can use the PX and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
My dad was a vet, but my dad was in the service when he was 15.
Yeah, so different time, different era, different types of being
Absolutely.
in the service. So it's so fascinating. I mean, just the entire and there's so much that you haven't even touched on.
Oh, I know, and you know parts of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I think I need to wait for the play for it, but however bizarre this is, it gets just well. My very good friend of a long time once said that my family was the Munsters and I was Marilyn. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the Munsters?
Yeah, sure.
And they had like this real normal looking cousin.
Yeah.
And they always felt really bad for them. My own family refers to me as the white sheep of the family. Because it's like, they'd look at me like, where did you come from? And I think I told you, they all assumed I was gay because I like, poetry and reading and,
Where did that come from? How did you get into that?
Well, that's, I think, because of my imagination. And my mother, again, there was time with me. And my mother she really tried to emulate this woman that she cleaned at houses for, and she saw the sons, and the sons in that family were always doing things that the mother was so proud of. And my mother loved her show ponies. She loved her kids to be, it's like, look what my son did. Look what my son did. And from very early, I always say I was like a trained chimp. She would say jump and I would say how high, because it made her happy. So I always did things to make her happy. So, and then it just worked naturally that, I was a pleaser, so I pleased. And one of the ways that I did it was by reading and making up stories and stuff. And
when you left home and you went to college, what was that experience like for you? Just like the first couple of weeks.
It was bizarre because no one was asking anything of me. I got kind of crazy my freshman year.
You lost it.
Oh, yeah. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll,
Yeah.
like in spades. And, well, you want to know the weirdest thing? My family's really poor. Really, really poor. Oh, here's the reason they were poor. When I met my dad, he said to me, your mother told you that I didn't ever send any money to support you. And I went, yeah, she did. He said, can I say something in my defense? I said, sure. And he was waiting for me. He pulled out a stack of envelopes. And it was all the support checks that he had sent that she sent back.
Interesting.
And we were on welfare.
But why? Why wouldn't you take it?
She wanted him. She didn't want the money. She wanted him. If he was going to be in life, he was, she had this real bizarre sort of thing. And I mean, I ate the government cheese and the canned meats and powdered milk. And this is where I was going. I got to college and I was on the meal plan and you could have all the milk you wanted. It's such a ridiculous
like bathing
thing.
in milk at that
and
point.
I would sit and I would just refill. I would, like you could refill a soda glass and
Yeah.
drink it and refill it. I would sit and have like 4 or 5 glasses of milk, because I could. It was just.
But why not take it for your kids? Take it in.
I think she thought she could leverage it to him coming back.
Coming back eventually.
like guilting him.
But I mean, after how many years do you realize it's not happening?
Yeah, well, they were officially divorced when I was 9, so, and my youngest brothers and sisters was 7, so they were 2.
But
so there was like 2 to 18. There was 16 years of support checks. Here's the other thing: my dad knew everything about me. 2 of the teachers that worked in my high school were bartenders in a bar that he worked a couple nights in a bar. It's one of the things he did to earn some extra money. So he had every report card I ever had. And those teachers would say to me, like, so you're in the play. And I'm like, yeah. Is your mom coming to see it? Well, yeah, she came opening night. And I think she's going to come the last weekend too, but she's not coming like this. We would do 3 weekends. My father came to the play.
And he had no clue.
And I had no clue.
Not a clue. Wow.
He used to slip in like right at the curtain. Like, when the lights went down.
But why not say something to you?
My mother would have made my life hell.
If she found out. Yeah.
Like she would always say, if you go to him, it's like you're stabbing me. It's like you're stabbing me. She would, and I was.
Was that only with you, or how about with the younger kids?
With all of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Except for the ones that went with him.
Yeah.
Very
and she disowned them. She was like, they're no good. They're just as bad as he is. It's like, it's just us. It's just us.
I mean, just the whole idea. Now, when they were together.
Now you got an 84-year-old woman sitting in a nursing home. How angry are you?
Yeah.
Does that serve any purpose?
What do you
This
do?
has been a therapy session
know.
for me this hour.
I know.
Yeah. No, I'm not mad. I think it's sad. I think it's a life wasted. That's how I feel.
But it's almost like you
and
wanted
her
to be
biggest
mad.
her biggest fear is being alone. And you know what?
She's alone.
She's alone.
Yeah.
There's the line. What you fear, you create.
Well, yeah, you make your bed and you sleep in it. I mean, that just it's at that age, especially. This is when it all comes out.
Yeah.
And they realize it.
Yeah.
I'm sure she realizes it.
Yeah.
It's so tough, though. I mean, especially for your brother. I feel so bad for him.
Yeah, and that, like I said, I'm there for him. I don't know if my mother will have any repentant moments.
So sad. It's time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Good therapy session, Lon.
I'm gonna go to Bear Burger now.
I hope I helped you. I need a drink after this. Holy cow!
I know. I need a cocktail.
Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. If you missed any portion of
people,
this.
cheer up. I'm okay. I'm okay. You know what? I really am. I really am okay. It's just like I consider myself very, very lucky. That's why I came back and one of my first posts was, we're having this party at the end of July. I'm having a big old party because I'm going to make sure that I'm surrounded by people who love me and that I love. Gotta be.
Yeah. Excellent. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. We'll be back next week, guys. So
and we'll talk about
tuned.
real stuff and not.
Yeah. It won't be as
It
depressing.
won't be the self-indulgent lawn hour.
All right, guys. Have a good night.
Right,
Take
good
care.
night.